Greetings, Taco Faithful. Thank you for joining me again this week. Once again, it's Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, and I'm here to bring you all yet again another Vikings episode review right here on Otaku Assemble Weekly. And as always, here to bring you the latest in this week's Vikings episode review. And this is my review of Season 2, Episode 6, entitled Unforgiven. Now, general thoughts on this week's episode. Another solid episode this week. Another pretty good episode, and I would probably say one of the most intriguing of the season, if not the most intriguing. And that's all in part due to all the balls they had rolling this week. Especially with Lagertha's story, Athelstan's story, and the events that happened in Kattegat. All those kept me guessing in one way or another. Now, I'm not saying I was completely surprised with some of the events, but definitely, stayed glued to the screen like, okay, what's going on? What the hell is that about? What does that mean? What's going to happen next? So, all in all, I think they did a really good job with everything. So, first thing I want to talk about is Lagertha's story. Now, granted, most of it I wasn't surprised by. I wasn't surprised that it was going to be more of the same when she went back to her abusive husband. Wasn't surprised when he sent that posse after her to beat her up. And I wasn't even surprised when she decided to kill him. Because all of that I knew was coming. I saw it coming. See what I did there? See what I did there? Okay, yeah, y'all get the joke. Anyway, but all of that I saw coming. What did surprise me, though, is when one of the other men assisted in the killing. That surprised me. Because the second it happened, it was like, wow, okay, well, why? You know what I mean? It would be very, very easy to assume it's like, well, the man abused his wife. And he publicly humiliated her on multiple occasions. So yeah, that guy has to be taken care of. But remember, that's their earl. That's the earl of that country. So yeah. To just have one of the guys, go ahead and decapitate him was kind of alarming, because it's like, okay, so I can assume that he's just doing the honorable thing, he's doing the right thing, but surely there are consequences for that. Then I also thought about this. It could be that he came about it with the just approach, that he was well within his rights to do so, because, and this is where I had to credit the writers, I was like, wow. You all remember in last week's episode when we got the scene back in Wessex where the woman went before King Ecbert and she claimed that her husband had beat her because he accused her of committing adultery. And when Ecbert asked Athelstan, how would the pagans deal with this? Athelstan said, well, if it all boils down to her word over, versus his, they would agree with her. They would side with her. And it wasn't until I started thinking about that I was like, wow, brilliant fucking foreshadowing on the part of the writers. Because here's the thing, granted, that's not the same situation, but it is a husband beating his wife. And so to the public, and everybody knows it, so to the public, they're thinking, no, this motherfucker is out of line and he has to be taken out. That's what I'm more leaning towards. But then there's also the possibility that maybe the guy has ulterior motives. Hell, maybe he has a thing for Lagertha. Maybe he wanted to be Earl and that was the most opportunistic opportunity. Listen to myself. That was the most opportunistic moment because Lagertha had already thrown the first blow. Could be. But that was the surprising part of that story. Did not expect that to happen. Now, since I just brought up Athelstan, I want to go ahead and I want to talk about his story next, because that was probably the most interesting part of the episode to me. Was the exchange between Athelstan and King Ecbert, both their scenes. I'm sorry, I was glued to the screen during those scenes. Who would have thunk that Ecbert was such, like, and I mean the way he talked about it, you could go ahead and argue he has an obsession with it maybe, but the way, who would have thunk he was so just entranced, just so taken by the Roman culture. And you know what? And that's a funny thing, because I would have never thought that would have even been mentioned or even been brought up in the context of the series. I would have never thought that they would have touched upon the Roman occupation of Britain, back in the ancient day. Well, occupation, but when Rome, when Britain was a Roman territory during the days of the Empire. And I would have never thought they would have touched on that at all. I didn't think they'd have much reason to. But the fact that Ecbert was, that he had such a thirst to learn more about them, and that he had such just a craving to preserving that culture, what was left there. Wow. I was really blown away by that. I would have never expected that. Would have never seen that coming. And now we finally know, or at least we have a better idea of why it is Ecbert kept Athelstan around, why he saved him, and what he wants to use him for. He wants him to preserve all that knowledge. And clearly he trusts Athelstan. Now, granted, he did mention that it was because he found him to be a kindred spirit, because, Athelstan is an artist, which I really fucking loved when that was revealed. And then the fact that Athelstan, he's been to the court of Charlemagne before. He understands, or at least has some type of mutual understanding with Ecbert about who Ecbert is and about, his views and whatnot. And then, of course, he can speak Latin, which is very useful, because that's where all the documents are in. They're all in Latin. So, all of that makes sense, but I would have never expected it. Never would have expected it. And it has to make me wonder, now that we know this about Ecbert, what is it that he wants in the end? What is his main goal? What is his major motivation that we can expect to see him act upon later on in the series? Is it this great quest for knowledge? This sort of, I don't want to call him a bookkeeper, not a bookkeeper, an historian. Is Ecbert going to become this sort of crusading historian who goes out and acquires, all these relics of Rome and, all these things that were left behind? Is he going to hoard all of that for some future goal? Or could it be that he wants to study the Roman culture so that he can find a way to sort of duplicate their empire in Wessex and throughout the rest of England? That's what I'm a little bit more leaning towards, that maybe he wants to learn more about that so that he can sort of learn, okay, well, if Rome had such this great empire, what went wrong? Okay, if I can better understand that, then I can prevent that from happening within my own kingdom when I start to branch out. That's what I think is really going on. But only time will tell. Only time will tell. And so, yeah, so now I'm going to talk about everything that happened at Kattegat this week. Now, you all will remember I gave you all my thoughts, my grand, theory, my grand, hypothetical of what was really going on with Horik, what was going on with his suggestion to Ragnar to have Jarlborg rejoin them, to reform the alliance, and all that stuff. If you haven't seen last week's episode review, I highly recommend you go and check it out before you watch the rest of this review, because, but, okay, so, first off, I'm glad that they touched back on at least more than what we knew before with Siggy and Horik. That we got some scenes with them, that there's more development going on in that relationship, and that we kind of got inside Siggy's head this week. I like that was touched upon, because to have Horik there and to not revisit that, I think would have been a great disservice to the audience. So we do know that Siggy wants, her position back. And I know that was mentioned before. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it earlier in one of my reviews. I can't remember if it was last season or if I touched on that this season. I'm not sure. Of course I fucking called it though. I knew that. But just her, first off, when she's talking to the seer, just her comments, the way she went about it, what she said, she said, I want my position back, and if Rollo rises, I rise with him. Okay, that makes sense, but once again, now I have to ask, what is it that she hopes to achieve? Is she hoping that Rollo will one day take Ragnar's place, or that he'll go abroad and become Earl of another country, and that she'll leave with him? I don't know. So then, when Horik gets back into the picture, we got a scene. First off, we got a very... that scene when Siggy had to sleep with Horik's son, found that very, very frustrating. Because it was like... just the fact that Horik would use her like that, that's some despicable shit. You know what I mean? That's some skullduggery shit. And so, but then the fact that Siggy went along with it, it's like, wow. Okay. But yeah, what surprised the hell out of me is that, apparently Siggy felt slighted by what Horik did, which does make sense, because he took advantage of her. But then what she told him about Ragnar, Horik says, wow, I never would have thought, you were right. I never would have thought Ragnar would have, went for my proposal. And she said, yes, he'll always do the opposite of what you expect. Which makes me think, it's like, well, how the hell can you two try to figure out what the hell he's going to do anyway if he's going to go against what you think he's going to do? That was something that kind of left me in the what the fuck mode to begin with. But then, the coup de grace of surprises, I guess you could say, in regards to just what was going on with them two this week, is that now Floki has some idea that something is amiss between them. And Floki made it clear when she asked him, she was like, can you keep a secret? He said, no. So I wonder if by episode end, I wonder if Ragnar and Rollo know about it, because Rollo seemed pretty pissed off at Siggy right before he went ahead and did his part, in the ambush. So I assume Rollo knows, and if Rollo knows, Ragnar has to know by now, which I can only imagine how he'll respond, how he'll react to either Siggy or Horik. Hopefully they touch upon that more next week. But we did see Jarl Borg finally taken into custody. We saw his men killed, and Ragnar's planning to execute him. That wasn't a surprise at all. If anything, I would say I'm more surprised by the fact that he left Jarl Borg alive, and that Jarl Borg wasn't killed on the spot. That's what surprises me, because now that he's left him alive, he's left the window open for escape. The idea, the possibility, the chance that Jarl Borg could flee, that's now on the table because Ragnar didn't take him out when he had the chance. You know what I mean? They could have very easily killed Jarl Borg when Rollo, Thorstein, and and Floki went into his camp. They could have easily taken him then. And we know he's trying to conspire with Horik to plan an escape because that was in the preview for next week's episode. I gotta say, I think that is probably maybe the second biggest surprise of this episode, right behind the thing with King Ecbert. The fact that Ragnar left him alive. And I can't even begin to imagine why that was. Maybe Ragnar's trying to once again be the just figure in all this. Try to be fair. Hey, y'all board committed crimes against me. We're going to take it to the people. There, I'm gonna make sure everyone knows that this is not so much in vengeance as it is just just setting things square. Maybe that's what he's planning on doing. Who fucking knows? Because you know what? Not that this is a problem, but that was another thing that I immediately caught in this week's episode is how... Did you all notice how much Ragnar is actually in the background? Think about it. He only really had, like, I want to say, 2 real scenes of dialogue. Every other scene he was in this episode, he was either quiet or, commenting very slightly. Now, granted that, you could just go ahead and assume, account that up to him being uber fucking pissed at Horik's suggestion and trying to subdue that rage the entire time until they got y'all Borg in custody. Yeah, that makes sense. But if anything, I would probably say that's the only real thing I was disappointed in this week's episode was the fact that we didn't get more into Ragnar's head this week. You know what I mean? That he just sort of went along with the routine. Went through the motions, if you will. So final comments on this week's episode. As I mentioned before, Floki, his scenes were hilarious, as always. I like that they went ahead, they're starting to set up this little romantic love interest for Bjorn. That was fun. I do wonder, though, if that's going to present a problem between him and Ragnar, because you'll remember when Rollo asked Floki about Bjorn, they said that he was supposed to be with Floki. And he went, to and brought his little love interest back to his place. So that leads me to believe that, okay, he wasn't where he was supposed to be. Maybe he had a job to do and he wasn't fucking doing it. Is that going to present a problem with Ragnar later on when Ragnar sees that Bjorn, clearly isn't taking care, he isn't handling business because he's blinded with this girl? We will see. And was there anything else I wanted to... No, I think that's pretty much it. Now, as far as my thoughts for next week's episode, based off of the preview we got, we know that, the execution is supposed to be planned. This whole thing tied into the Blood Eagle, which I will do a shout out. I'm not sure, I'm sorry, I don't have the viewer's name, but one of my viewers, and you know who you are, mentioned the Blood Eagle either in one of the comments on one of my previous reviews or sent me a message on Facebook about it. But anyway, if you're watching this review, shout out to you. Good fucking job calling that, because yeah, I would once again, I didn't know that about Viking culture, so of course I would have never seen that coming. But good eye. So shout out to them. You get a cookie. But anyway, getting back to what I said about my thoughts for the preview for next week, I'm pretty much going to, I'm just going to wait and see what happens, because they leave it on a big cliffhanger, and they don't suggest enough to really start, making a bunch of speculations about what could happen. We know what's supposed to be set in motion, but we don't know how it's supposed to play out. I don't even think there was a simple, like, sort of like ending scene, you know what I mean? Like a fight or a killing or anything like that we saw in the preview. More or less, it was all just dialogue, you know, a hint to the conversations we're going to see. I don't think that's enough to really start making a lot of speculations. And another thing is that in the promo, they said, you know, next week is going to be one of the most shocking moments in television. Find that hard to believe. What are they going to do? Kill off Ragnar? Come on. I've been through this before. TV show kills off their male lead and most loved character. No, not that surprising, boss. Been through this before. Been there, done that. Nice try. Maybe 3 years ago you would have got me with that. So, we'll see. But I am definitely looking for... I mean, I look forward to this show every week. But now they just got so much things in play right now. You can't help but tune in every week just to see where it's all going to lead. So, with that being said, that's going to conclude this week's Vikings episode review. I want to thank you all for joining me again this week. And in the comments below, let me know your thoughts both on this week's episode, and if any of you guys got some speculations, predictions, and expectations for next week, please let me know. Share those in the comments below, because I still don't know what to think about that trailer. Don't know. So, alright. Brief update. What can you expect to see on the channel later this week and tomorrow? I will be having a Game of Thrones podcast with myself and a few of my colleagues here on YouTube. That will be up tomorrow. My Captain America, the Winter Soldier review will either be up late tomorrow night or early Saturday morning. I haven't decided when I'm going to post that up yet. But I am going to go see it tomorrow at noon, and I'm going to do my review as soon as I get back. So the video is being made tomorrow. I just haven't decided when it's going to get posted. Saturday night is going to be my Da Vinci's Demons review. I'll be reviewing last week's episode as well as this week's episode. And then Sunday, what you all have been waiting for, the return of Game of Thrones. So my Season 4 Episode 1 review will be up for that Sunday night. And with that being said, this has been Larry Williams, OAW Commander-in-Chief, signing off. And until next time, peace.